Dick saw being Robin as a thrill. It's probably why he outgrew it. Jason saw being Robin as a game. It's probably what got him killed. I could have taken her, you know. Tell her that. But Tim, I have to hand it to the boy. He wants to be the world's greatest detective. And from what I've seen so far, he will be someday. And you said you didn't see it that way. It was all the same. Science, religion, myth, stories. We're all stardust fallen. And so we look to the sky. And we wait to be reclaimed. Goodbye, Ma. Goodbye, Pa. And thank you for everything. Welcome to Field of Geeks special episode, Comic Talk.
I'm Steve.
I'm Josh.
And we have a very special guest, Dan Umthun of the Doomcast podcast. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Dan has an awesome video cast and local stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
All-around great guy. Thanks for coming on. It was nice seeing you.
I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. No, I'm totally...
All right. Thanks, everybody. This has been Field of Geeks.
Prep was worth
That's
it.
right. That's my bit every week, I guess, in the show in the first 2 minutes, and then we can keep going. So,
Well, you know, like ever since the con, we've been mentioning your name.
Yeah.
Big fans.
yeah,
and,
plugging the podcast a lot.
Yeah,
and-
I just like our community. I don't know if you know of them yet, but there's the Doctors Who podcast. They came on, and
Awesome.
They're great guys.
Yeah.
So
That was a fun show to
It's just
do,
nice
too.
to know other people around here.
Yeah.
And of course, with your stand-up, I'm sure you really know a lot of talent out there. And
It's there's a lot of talented stand-ups in town. There's a lot of people doing a lot of really neat stuff. And it's crazy because I feel like Des Moines is finally getting to a place where it's comfortable acknowledging the fact that there's talent here.
yes,
Because I feel like when I moved here like 10 years ago, and there was, even at that time, this idea that like it wasn't an outwardly spoken thing, except there were like T-shirts at Triple Z Records at the time. I don't even know if it was Triple Z, maybe it was Capital, that just said Dead Moines.
Right.
And it like the idea was nothing good happened here. And then like over 10 years, it's just like gotten
yeah.
really cool. And a lot of people have kind of taken a lot of pride in what they do and what they've been doing across like any art, whether it's podcasting or music, or theater, stand-up comedy, actual visual arts, dance. I mean, it's outstanding. And there is a cultural renaissance in this city, and it's really badass. To be perfectly honest, and hopefully it continues.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty neat. And you know, as someone who's about 94 years old, and I moved
You
here.
look great.
Yeah, right. I moved here in '99, and it was. I came from I grew up in the Omaha area, and Omaha always had a zillion things going on at all times. And going to Des Moines, it was just kind of like, oh, geez, what's this? Dead Moines made sense.
Yeah.
It's not even Moines, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot. If you can't find something to do now that covers your tastes,
You're not
you're
looking.
not looking hard enough, right?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely correct there. Like you can find, a drink and draw or like, just a weird, I don't know, you can find a vegan liberal pub crawl happening this week. There's got to be happening
Right.
somewhere. I don't know.
The vegans love me.
I used to be.
Yeah?
Yeah. I also used to be a butcher at Hy-Vee. So,
While being a vegan, or
no.
I like the dichotomy you got going on there. That's good.
No, I switched teams. That sounds like not what I'm trying to say. I had a weird personal renaissance that kind of changed things for me politically and dietarily and a lot of stuff where it was just kind of a central shift. It was sort of around the time that my father-in-law passed away. And I'm getting real deep here all of a sudden.
No, it's
but
all right.
I kind of went from a place where I shifted from an ideal of like law and order where people need to follow very specific rules. This is how life is supposed to be. To that structure is artificial and it's something that we create. And the reality of everything is that we all have one very short life. and it's precious for all of us. And then I kind of went even farther beyond that, and I was like, well, if that's the case, we all have this one and only life, and it's our responsibility to care for one another. And conversely, it's our responsibility to care for anything that's able to be conscious. And so I was like, well, bacon is delicious. I can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but I hate the people who are like vegetarian who are just act like they look down on people for it.
Right.
Because bacon is objectively delicious. Yeah. It's something that, if you choose not to do it, you may have your reasons, but you can't be a jerk to somebody else who likes stuff that everybody else likes.
Right. So, and if you don't like bacon, there's a trustworthy problem there. I mean, you can't really be trusted. So, yeah, I made a joke on Twitter about vegans, and I had really nothing against vegans at all. It was just more of a...
Did it get you in trouble?
Hundreds.
Oh.
With multiple go kill yourselves.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was fun.
Wow.
And all I said was something to the effect... Yeah, this isn't verbatim, but the gist was... what would happen if every vegan was put on an island together? Who would they tell that they were vegans? So that was the gist of it. It was just me just being a smart aleck. I didn't really.
That's so innocuous because when I was vegan, I'm still vegetarian. I don't eat meat, but I'll eat cheese and eggs. And I don't even. Anyway, I used to have a joke where I would say that the only reason that I mention in my set that I'm vegan is because we have to tell somebody that we're vegan every 10 minutes.
See? Right.
Otherwise, our head explodes, and then everyone's covered in meat, and that wouldn't be vegan.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Anyway, that's such a weird thing to get that angry about.
It was funny. I did have some good dialogue with a few people.
Yeah.
Back and forth, and that was okay. Yet I still had to defend myself, like some sort of weirdo, but... Yeah, the go kill yourself stuff was fun. Those were good times.
You're not winning anybody over to your side by being a dick.
I know, right? Oh, you've convinced me. I'm sold now. Thanks.
You've made me hurt.
Right.
Well, clearly.
I think I'll just go out and get a pound of bacon and just put it on a sandwich. That's
Send
how
it to
sad
them.
I am right now.
Maybe they'll be happy.
Little Lady Gaga meat suit. All right. So, but comics, right? Is that what we're here tonight?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's right.
So Dan is a big comics guy.
Oh boy.
I've dabbled in comics a little myself over the years. Again, being alive as long as I have. I was there when they made paper for the first time, so that was nice. Dan also brought beer, by the way, and you're going to hear me drink that right now.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you. Very good.
Very good stuff. So we just have a few things that we'll run through. It's just some fun stuff. Kind of some casual conversation around kind of who your favorites are, and it's hard to nail down a favorite or two or three. Like for my DC, as an example. So favorite DC character and then favorite Marvel character. So for DC, for me, it's Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, the Hal Jordan version.
Nice.
And I wrote down with a side of Superman, because there's a billion characters on each of these two companies. I love to death. Mm-hmm. But
sure.
I grew up. Hal Jordan was my, that was when I was a little kid. That was the first one that really resonated with me. Loved the idea of a power ring that it's controlled by your mind. And
of course.
Oh yes,
pretty cool.
Oh, this is great. Steve, I knew I liked you. This is, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I'm a '70s kid, so I grew up, and I was able to read the social conscious stuff that the Green Arrow, Green Lantern stuff. It started with issue 76, and they went on a huge run. Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams art, just phenomenal stuff. So I kind of grew up on that. And I loved Batman. I loved I loved everything, but. Yeah, I thought Hal Jordan was the coolest just because, as a kid, I'm thinking, man, that guy can make anything with a ring. It's nice. Up to his imagination,
mm-hmm.
So that was fun for me. But DC characters, how about you guys? Dan?
Oh, boy.
Wonder who? No.
You don't have to pick just one. You can pick...
Yeah, that's true.
I had a lot of difficulty making this choice because... Hal Jordan's easily in my top 5. Yeah. He's probably, but if I had to number them, I'd have to put him at number 3.
Okay,
and that's a real close number 3 to number 1.
Okay,
like I have to put them in a triumvirate basically.
Nice.
Because like my number 2 would be Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern.
Oh, nice.
And I like Kyle Rayner ever so slightly, like just like infinitesimally slightly more than Hal Jordan, only because I mean the guy's an artist. His ring constructs are always they're very elaborate. They're elaborate and they're geek related, kind of. Like he's always like, whereas Hal Jordan is like, oh, I've got like a shield or like a boxing glove.
Right.
Kyle Rayner's like, I am an Evangelion, or I'm like a giant mech, or I'm Optimus Prime.
Right.
Or I have like a full suit of armor and like a sword. I'm like one of the elves from Lord of the Rings. Like and those nods are always there. Also, his whole his run, like the Judd Winnick run back in the like late to early 90s. Him being on the Justice League during Grant Morrison's run, that's got a special place in my heart. And also, like it doesn't hurt the fact that Tom King, who's my current favorite DC writer, did him on Omega Men.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, and that is such a great book. Omega Men is a heartbreaking look at like just what war does to people. Like the nuances of, you know, what one person calls a terrorist, somebody else calls a freedom fighter.
It introduced a lot of nuance from serious issues.
The whole book is gray area. I mean, but it's real good. But my number one, far and away, I think I say far and away, but he's still real close, is Martian Manhunter, John Jones.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, because you get power set wise, right? You get everything. You get the entire Superman package, but you also get the fact that he is like this tremendous psychic power, this incredible psychic responsibility as well. This code of ethics that goes along with his use of his psychic power,
right?
And he's all about not violating the sanctity of other people's thoughts, which is not something you kind of tread that in Marvel with like Professor X and so forth.
Yeah, Jean Grey, those whole, I mean, their morality in that piece of it is a little bit looser. Where, yeah, you're right. John Jones is he's a lot more.
I mean, he's more about like when you. He's not invading people's thoughts as much as like he senses their emotions, which that gets into like empathy more. But he's still clearly psychic. Plus, you know, there's the whole phasing. He's like DC's the Vision, but he still has that aspect of being truly more alien than Superman. And in that way, he's even more of an outsider, which is oddly makes him. I think outsiders are very relatable to comic geeks anyway, because that's kind of the people that gravitate towards them. Right. So, you know, you have your Peter Parkers, you have your Clark Kents, Martian Manhunter, and, you know, he's an outsider in a lot of ways because he's got this pain that he's hidden from everybody else. But no, I like John Jones, Martian Manhunter a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I've cleaned up pretty much every solo series that he's been part of.
And I enjoy his favorite cookie.
Absolutely. The Choco.
Yeah. Translation Oreos.
AKA
DC's version
Oreos,
of Oreos
yes.
That they can't really, you know, advertise. It's the same deal.
When John Ostrander was here, I did a Doomcast interview with him at the Comic-Con that never aired because the sound did not work.
Oh man! No.
But I specifically was talking to him about that.
He's a legend. Yeah,
I mean, he's such a geek in and of his. I mean, he loves what he does.
Yeah.
So much in a way that a lot of comic people who are writers who are already geeks, you know, aren't even as geeky as he is to the degree that he is. He's a fanboy that just managed to get his dream job.
Right.
And
that bleeds through everything he writes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's awesome.
Yeah, he is a lot of fun. He's a blast.
Good.
Yeah, it was a great. I wish that I'd actually been able to air it.
Yeah.
But it's the sound did not work out at all. So kind of a mess.
Closed captioning.
Right.
I mean, there's a possibility. It's just unintelligible. So like, I don't even know what we were saying up there.
Oh, really?
Because of the fact that I had one I had one Zoom mic that was positioned off to the side of us because I don't know if it's clear with. It looks like I know what I'm doing with the Doomcast. I have no idea. I've been flying by the seat of my pants since the beginning of it.
It looks great.
Faking it well.
I've been faking it really well, but like some of this, I just had this mic off to the side, and the room was huge, because it was that basement part of Iowa Event Center.
Yeah.
Real echoey, and just everything reverberated back onto both of us, so the mic didn't really pick up anything quite intelligible. It's real hard to hear anything, but it was cool. Yeah. I don't know. It was cool to meet him.
Yeah, for sure.
At least you have that,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Still sucks, but
yeah. Well, how about you, Josh? DC character. Well, who do you gravitate towards?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Batman?
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone who knows Josh, that's not a surprise. I asked the question to be nice, but
yeah, Batman's my all-time favorite ever since childhood. Just I don't know how I got introduced to him, but he's one of the first things I try to draw, And I remember asking my dad, like, how come he doesn't fly? And all that stuff, and he had no idea
because he's just a dude.
Yeah, and that wasn't his answer. I forgot what it was, but it's like he just dresses.
Well,
like
that's not
bat.
a wholly accurate answer, but it's close. Right? It's the dumbed down oversimplification.
If we ever do
technically,
my life
son,
story,
he does fly in the Batplane,
Right?
Which he's financed with money.
Well,
which is his real power.
Tangent, the BVS beginning sequence. At first, I was like, he can't fly like that. And I'm like, this is a dream, right? And yeah, it was a dream. So thank God. But yeah, if they ever changed that, I'd be against it. It'd just be crazy. But yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Batman
so
fan.
Batman's gone through a million iterations over the years. So if you think of like the camp of the 50s and 60s going into, like the Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, Dick Giordano 70s stuff.
Sure.
Where it starts getting a little bit more serious, not necessarily dark per se, but I mean they brought it to a more serious tone. And then you have the 80s, the Frank Miller intro to,
Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, Dark Knight Returns, the whole kind of post-apocalyptic Batman.
Pretty much changed things,
yeah,
right? Like
pretty
brought
much
on the novelization type of aspect.
What characterization of Batman do you prefer the best? Do you like the lighter tone Batman? Do you like the brooding, serious?
Well, I don't like when he kills.
Yeah,
that's one thing. Yeah, I'm a huge animated series fan.
Yeah,
that's really my Batman. Honestly,
there you go.
Keaton's my Batman too, because that '89 movie was so big, and I was so young I couldn't go to the theater and see it. I couldn't wait to get it on VHS, and that just introduced me even further. I got the movie adaptation comics.
Oh, nice.
Every Batman movie I have, except they stopped making them after Begins, but I even have Batman and Robin. It's actually better than the movie.
Well, that doesn't say much for me, but
I mean, yeah, no, but yeah, that turned me on to all that. And I remember the animated series actually had a comic line, and I bought into that. And just he's pretty much been the go-to forever.
Yeah,
so.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you.
What are your thoughts on Batman: Brave and the Bold? The cartoon from like 2008.
Yes. Okay, everything that came after the animated series at first, it was jarring to me. And it still is, in many ways. I still think that works, the way they did it. Just the look and everything was perfect. But I do admire the Brave and the Bold for kind of Adam Westing it up a little bit, you know? I think all those, different versions are, they're not always my cup of tea, but I do appreciate, it's kind of nice to see certain sides, and if you can watch it with your kids or whatever, it's
well, that's the fun part.
Yeah, but
I did like the other one. It's called The Batman.
One, it was like in between both of them.
Right. I like the stylized animation of it. I mean, I thought it was a unique looking program, and I thought the show was pretty good.
It had like a hint of the animated series a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, with a little bit more of a almost an anime type feel in certain spots.
Yeah,
but I thought that was pretty well done.
Sure,
well done show. But yeah, I don't know. That's good.
I love that there's a genuinely a comedy version of the most serious superhero that you could get.
Right.
Like, you can't get more serious and more dark and more dour than Batman.
Right.
And then, like, some of the best superhero anything that's out there of any genre is the comedy version of Batman.
Right.
Like, when you get down to, like, the Lego Batman, even, like, it's super entertaining. And it's not, it doesn't have to be the same Batman, because all of those versions of Batman kind of exist. And that's why I was like, you were like, oh, Keaton's my Batman. Like, you get to choose.
Right.
That's what's great about it, is like, you can choose, like, what your ideal or real Batman is. Like, I'm partial to both Christian Bale and Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
But you can have them both.
You can have them both.
Once again, this sounds like more suggestive than what I mean to say. But they're out there, and that's it's great.
They
I
all
love
have
Brave and the
something
Bold.
to
It's
give.
so silly.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, they all give something in their performances. Maybe they're not always in the best things, the particular Batman or whatever, but...
Well, and he's one of those few characters that you can really do that with. Superman is Superman, and in any iteration, he's Superman. And while I love Superman to death, because just the idealism of him, the positivity, I think that there needs to be that balance with a Batman type character and a Superman, and that's why they mesh so well. But yeah, you don't see people goofing on Superman because it's hard to goof on him.
No.
He is who he is, and he's the Boy Scout. But with Batman, there's multiple characterizations out there, and they're all pretty entertaining.
Right.
And so it's just an interesting take that he's one of those few characters that you can really kind of mess around with and get creative.
Other big exception, especially in Brave and the Bold, Aquaman, when he's just a turd, like, he's just outrageous.
Right,
like, he's a Zap Brannigan, like, buffoon.
right.
It's so great.
Yeah.
Like, you let him play, like, the idiot character the whole time, and he's so lovable. And especially that outrageous catchphrase. Like, if I had, like, enough hair that I didn't have to, like, have the haircut that I do to pretend that I have hair, and I could just, like, I could dye it and not worry that it would all fall out the next day, I would totally do an Aquaman Batman Brave and the Bold cosplay.
Nice.
Just with the weird, like, I don't know, he got the full beard. He's silly. Like, I don't know. He's like the Ron Swanson of that show, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good.
Batman, wait a minute. Is Batman the Brave and the Bold Community? Or not Community, Parks and Rec? Is Batman Leslie Knope? Is Robin Tom Haverford? Did we just stumble on something that, like,
Maybe.
Dang.
I like that.
We need that. We need someone who does videos to make that happen.
Right. Yeah. Little
Maybe I
mashup
need to do this. I'll just take a bunch of action figures and just make a stop motion, like Parks and Rec. Sorry for calling it Community first.
Yeah,
That's
right.
blasphemy. Anyway, all right, moving on.
Yeah. So I just started watching Parks and Rec again on Netflix. That's funny you mentioned it. So
It's a good show.
So shifting gears to Marvel. So favorite Marvel characters. I know as a kid, again, it's one of those things that this is one of the first Marvel characters that resonated with me. And arguably not probably the most popular character in Marvel, but The Thing from the Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah.
Loved him to death. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that team. And as a kid growing up in the 70s, I mean, the Fantastic Four, the whole John Byrne era was just phenomenal as a kid reading it, and sure. I have the Marvel Unlimited app, and I can go back and reread every issue from issue. What the hell? This is the beer talking, people.
Dude, I'm doing the same thing. It's like 7%.
Every
I'm sorry.
issue from issue 1 to current, is out there. So it's kind of fun. But yeah, I love The Thing, and I knew when he fought the Hulk, he wasn't going to win, but I wanted to see him. I wanted to see him try, and he was just he was a fun character, and then my secondary would probably be Spider-Man. I mean, I know a lot of people think that, but that's a fun character to play with too. I think a lot of different versions, a lot of different takes on him, and pretty cool stuff.
It's one of my favorite single issues. Did you read John Hickman's run of Fantastic Four?
I did. Yeah.
One of my favorite issues of that run is the one where Reed helps the Thing figure out a way so that he can be human
again,
for
right?
1 week per year. or like however long. It was it 1 week or was it 1 day?
I thought it was a day.
It was a day.
I think so.
And then you find out that if he's not human, he doesn't age. And so he lives for like millions of years or something. And he's on like like multiple future versions of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. And it's so heartwarming because it's just like, no, I'm like almost choked up. It's like you are the heart and soul of the first family of Marvel. And you carry that through like every future iteration. Yeah. And I don't know, it's such a cool issue. Like I think about it every once in a while too. And I'm just like, that's, if you're not a fan of the Thing, it'll make you a fan of the Thing, for sure.
Yeah, and they just relaunched Fantastic Four again.
Yes.
Which issue 2 just came out last week. I read it on day 1 that it came out. And, you know, the Thing is, he's just awesome. I mean, to me, he's the everyman who was turned into the holy crap, you know. I mean, he was just, you know. But again, you know, he's that voice of reason on the team, and he's just one of my favorites. What about you?
So as far as heroes go, it's easier. It's easier for me to go like team by team necessarily. Sure. But if I have to pick a number 1 out of heroes in Marvel, it's probably Nightcrawler.
Oh, nice.
I love the fact that it's, you know, it's kind of similar in some ways to the Thing.
Yeah.
In that he's a guy who doesn't have a choice but to look the way he looks.
Right.
And doesn't want to, and has struggled with it his entire life, and has been vilified for it, but really, truly cares about other people in a way that a lot of other people who are, even on the X-Men in Marvel, don't.
Right.
Plus, just the teleporting power makes the fighting style incredibly cool.
Right.
And I don't know if you ever played the X-Men PlayStation 1 fighting game, where it like that was one of the first times they actually put him in, like he had swords,
right?
And it was way ahead of its time. It was like a PlayStation 2 game that shouldn't have been released on PlayStation 1, but it was the dopest thing. It was crazy. The combos that you could pull off teleporting with that was awesome, and I was like, no, I'm full on a Nightcrawler fan.
So the second X-Men movie, what did you think of that opening scene?
It was incredibly cool, and then and Alan Cumming was a pretty good choice, honestly. Like I like Alan Cumming as just an actor anyway.
Yeah.
And the most recent movie, Apocalypse.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in that movie, which by and large I was like, it's okay, except for like the Quicksilver parts and the one part where Nightcrawler, like you see from his perspective what it's like teleporting, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, that was
this
pretty
is
awesome.
Perfect. Like that's exactly what you like. You want to see like just how space bends around him instead. Totally something. No, I don't even know that anybody's done that in comics that I've seen. Anyway, that was awesome.
Yeah, it's always Banff in the cloud, and then
you see him somewhere else. Right. But you never see like him just like folding through that into whatever dimension he's going into. It's not limbo. Who knows?
All right.
Favorite Marvel character?
Sure.
Not a hero. Dr. Doom. Period.
Oh, yeah.
Easily, because he's a tragic character. Yeah. It's not unlike the Thing. Also.
Right.
Maybe different in the respect that he maybe thinks that he's disfigured, and in some versions he actually is very disfigured. But he's kind of a Lex Luthor character in some ways because he thinks that he is better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. The difference is that Doom is right. He actually is.
Right.
Like he is he is a superior scientist, a superior sorcerer. He's the Batman. He's what Batman looks like in Marvel.
Yeah.
But the problem is that he is so completely arrogant. He's aware, and he has no capacity necessarily for altruism. That's not his style. He does want to do good things for other people, but only because other people will recognize him for having done it.
Yeah, he'll get the benefits from that, not just the I did something good. Yeah,
right. It's not and it's his primary motivation is simply proving that he's better than somebody else.
Right.
And I think that many of us are probably liars if we don't admit that that's part of our motivation for a lot of things. In some ways, is that we just want to prove ourselves. So I think that's relatable. One of my favorite Doom arcs ever. I'm talking a lot.
It's okay.
But one of my favorite Doom arcs is it's the Mark Millar run on Fantastic Four, where the Maquis of Death is this. I don't remember the guy's name. He's also the character in 1985, which is another Mark Millar series. He's able to just bend reality at will, which is kind of similar to Franklin Richards' power.
Right.
So he's able. He goes and just trounces Doom in his own house, makes him look like an idiot, and then throws Doom back 65 million years into the mouth of a shark in the Atlantic Ocean. And you see Doom get eaten by a shark, and then you're like, all right, well, that's the end of Doom, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Then you find out that Doom, claws his way back over 65 million years using arcane science, teaching himself additional sorcery for this however many millions of years, claws his way back, and he is, in secret, the assistant to the Maquis of Death the whole time. Then he reveals himself at that moment, takes the Maquis of Death down, and then he's like, also, by the way, I'm now basically God, Reed Richards, so I'm about to embarrass you. And then Mark Millar's run ended, and they never addressed the fact that Doom had perfected all science and all art and was easily and inarguably the greatest and most powerful character in Marvel. Never come back to that.
Never came back to it. They
to
really
that.
reverted back to, I don't know, I'd say stereotypical Doom. You know,
crazy bluster.
Right.
Which is okay.
His appearance in Fantastic Four #2, the latest issue, phenomenal. If you haven't read it, it was fun to see him back in that capacity, messing with the Fantastic Four a little bit. It was good.
Nice. I loved Secret Wars.
Yeah.
The Hickman Secret Wars, just because that's the idea. If I could have written a Doom story, I would have tried to write even close to that.
Right.
The idea of somebody that arrogant. Because at the same time that there's a part of me that's rooting for him, there's a part of me that does want him proved wrong. There's a part of me that does want him to learn, you're good. You could be a part of this.
Right.
You could be a benefit to everybody. Look at Tony Stark. He's an asshole.
Oh, yeah, but he still does it.
But you could be better than him.
Yeah.
And his comeback in the infamous Iron Man was really cool. Because that was kind of the turn that I wanted, where he's just like, you can't really trust this guy necessarily. He's got his own motivation, but he's better than people are giving credit for. I don't know. Anyway,
that's awesome.
Well, to ask, 'cause I love comics. I'm mostly a movie guy. In the end, that's how I see a lot of these comic characters come to life. I mean, we all do, but occasionally I read into them. But given that we're probably going to finally see the Doom people want to see, what storyline can you think of from the comics would be really just right to introduce him into the world?
That's tough, because I've always contended that the Fantastic Four is a tough screen translation, and having nothing to do with the movies that have already come out. Just in general, that's a tough property to convert. I mean, can it be done? I think it can be done. I mean, the last one that came out that was so horribly panned, one thing I think they got right was the look of the Thing. Doom, when he was going psycho and just screwing people up. Yeah, I mean, that to me was like a holy crap moment.
Oh, I was terrified.
Right, that was a very cool cinematic moment, and cemented him as he's not very redeemable at this point.
No, but up until that point, we're talking about the Josh Trank version. Up until that point, the first half of that movie was exactly the Fantastic Four movie I was hoping for.
Right.
I was like, this is great. I was like, the Doom is sympathetic. He's kind of an interesting character. He's got a genuine chemistry with Kate Mara as Sue Storm at that. I was about to say Richards, but they weren't married yet.
Right. Yeah.
And it was really good up until that point. But the halfway point in that movie,
the time jump,
shit, something happened there.
The 1 year time jump or whatever it was.
It was not good.
No,
from that point on.
Part of me was wondering, did they fire everyone having to do with the film, with the exception of the actors, and then just rehired at that
point?
For
real.
I mean, that's what it felt like, and it was just...
Because that's not where I was thinking they were taking Doom. What I was thinking that they were going to do is that he was going to find that... My idea in my head is that where they were taking that movie up to that point is... After they found that way to they got to the negative zone, or what you presume the negative zone is, that Doom was going to get back. Somehow they get out of the prison that they're kept in. Doom tweaks it, and then he figures out, he's like, I don't just have to go to the negative zone. I can go to heaven, and I can see my mother. And then that's where things go crazy, and then Richards tries to fix it and ends up sucking him into the negative zone, disfiguring him, and then he comes back and tries to kill all of them, and all of that happens on Earth, and it would have been just fine there, but instead they had him fuse like garbage onto him, so he was trash panda Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And
this is where studio heads need to stay out of the movies.
Yes.
Stop with your ideas. I mean, give it to the people who know the source material, and it was, but see, the sad thing was there was a lot of nice visuals in that movie.
There were,
and
I liked how they got their powers. You felt like it was hell.
And like you say, that first half of that movie was like, where are we going?
It wasn't the same thing as what happens in comics, and I was like, I'm fine with this. Yeah. This brings the negative zone into things right away. You don't have to explain that. You get the establishment. The only thing that I had a problem with was that it was too long. That establishment part.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you go look it up, anybody listening to this should go look this up. It's out online. Max Landis, comic writer, great comic writer, son of John Landis. Guy wrote Green Valley, which is a great limited series everybody should check out. Max Landis also wrote Chronicle with Dane DeHaan, and curiously, it was directed by Josh Trank, the guy that directed Fantastic Four. Anyhow, he wrote a 3-page treatment that he put on Twitter of Fantastic Four.
That's right, yeah.
And it is 2 pages long, and it gets them from, like, instead of like any of that, it's just like Reed Richards yelling at the cops. The cops are outside of like this ranch that he's built where he has put a little like an Astro, or what is it called? Whatever the VW bus. Maybe it's just called a VW bus. They've converted it into a spacecraft. And the cops are like, you shouldn't launch this. And then there's like some witty banter that is genuinely clever. I don't remember it. And then they launch, and then boom, Fantastic Four. And that's like how it starts. Yeah. And then it's like 10 years later, and it's like Reed Richards and them. They already have their powers. Nothing else you need to explain.
Right.
That's the way to do it.
Oh, that is the way to do it. I mean, how many times have we seen Spider-Man get bit? How many times have we seen the Waynes die? I mean, no one's died on film. I've made this joke a million times, more than Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Oh, geez.
No kidding. But you're right. I mean, to take something in the established piece of it, no one needs to see a retelling of a Spider-Man origin. Not a single person alive. The Raimi films made well over billions of dollars.
Oh, you could go to Thailand and you can ask a 7-year-old child and just be like, do you speak English? They're like, yes. You're like, how does Spider-Man get his powers? He's bitten by a radioactive spider.
Boom.
You're like, all right, good. Everybody on the planet knows.
Let's start on year 3.
I mean, just go to Russia, ask a 94-year-old woman, like, who is Spider-Man? He's the swing of the New York. Right. You're like, yes, okay, perfect.
Enough people saw those movies, they know. So that's one of my pet peeves is just the rehash of origin.
That's so good,
unnecessary.
Too, because everyone has in their mind how they get their powers, like the ideal way, and to just kind of leave that up to like whoever wants to imagine, and you just pick them up years later.
Oh man!
And the budget would have been cheaper. You don't have to go in space and do all that stuff.
And I made a very controversial statement in the past in regards to Batman and Robin. The thing that they did the best, and it was brilliant. Thomas and Martha Wayne didn't die in that show. It's the only one that's never happened in. At least a flashback piece of it and addressing it.
Right.
We didn't see it. Now, what we did see was terrible. But they did not do that. I mean, I wish they would have made an awesome movie, but that was the right thing to do. I mean, you didn't have to rehash that. Like you had in every movie before that. So
it's beautiful that the Spider-Man video game that just came out. There is no reference to how Spider-Man got his powers.
See.
Don't discuss it. You jump right in. The second that game starts, you are swinging on a web through New York.
That's amazing.
It is
Steve's
great.
now going to go buy a PlayStation 4.
It makes me want to buy a PlayStation.
Go.
I am actually contemplating buying a PlayStation 4.
Get the Spider-Man edition. Just do it tonight. Drink. Have another beer.
One more beer and I'm gone.
We're going to finish this first.
All right.
It's possibly. I'm not kidding. Like I'm a big gamer. It's easily in my top 10 games of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, then that's pretty high praise.
It's the
because
Arkham
I've
for
wasted
Spider-Man.
a lot of my life playing video games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, likewise.
it's worth it.
It looks great. I've seen the screenshots. I'm really anxious to
It's
get
short.
it.
Is
That's
it?
the only caveat. Is
But I bet it's replayable. I mean, it's just
you could. I think that there's a lot of it is like a lot of the Batman Arkham games.
Right.
I mean, it's very similar in a lot of respects, but there's the parts where Batman Arkham could be better. It is better.
nice.
It's got a lot of redeeming qualities. Everything about it is perfectly fluid. It deserves all the accolades it's getting.
I still pick up the Arkham games just to strictly do some combat and relieve some stress. You know,
Oh man,
I don't have a drug problem. Like I said, I
Combat
barely
problem.
drink beer. You know, this is my way.
it's so much fun. I mean, the combat it does feel very similar. Like the mechanics
Right.
are very similar to the combat in the Arkham games. The only drawback that I can name is that it's definitely short.
Yeah.
Like it's about as short as the first Arkham Batman.
Which was very short.
It was.
I wonder if they'll do DLC though that might
I'm
add on to
hoping.
that. Yeah, let's hope. Knock on the wood here, but
They
that's
put
good.
a lot of work into it. I
Yeah.
hope they get it ready for add-ons. Yeah.
It's
gorgeous.
getting some great accolades, and that
looks
It is anything. I mean, if you've been to Manhattan to a lot of landmarks, there's a couple things that are out of place. There's some things they didn't get the rights to. Like, for example, my buddy Matt Jacobson pointed out that the Wall Street Bull, they didn't have the rights to use it, so they put Lockjaw from the Inhumans in there.
That's right.
And that's really funny. Freedom Tower and Ground Zero are shifted. Like, they aren't in the place that they're supposed to be, block-wise. But you can go,
But they're there.
block for
Yeah.
block for everything. The only other thing that I'm very angry is not there is the Baxter Building.
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
It doesn't exist. The Fantastic Four don't exist. There's Oscorp. There's Damage Control. There's the Rand Corporation.
Yeah.
There's Josie's. There's the Alias Investigations. There's a ton of stuff.
Stark Tower there?
Stark Tower is there. It's they call it Avengers Tower, but like it's what it is.
Right.
And it's like it's off of like Central Park East or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. I don't know if there's a Central Park East or whatever, but it's the east of Central Park.
Dr.
Oscorp,
Strange's place.
Sanctum Sanctorum
Yeah.
is right there, like where it's supposed to be. Because if you put in GPS, like I looked it up, I was like, well, where's Bleecker Street?
Right.
And then I put it in, and I was like, oh, it should be north of this park. Then I looked at the map after you like unlock like all the map parts, and I was like, oh, that's where it should be. And then I go there, and I was like, holy,
There it is.
it's here.
Unreal.
And it was, yeah, exactly. I was like, they did this right.
See,
anyway,
that's phenomenal. You know, when
was so
people
good.
put care into that like that, I mean, that just makes all the detail.
Well, it's real,
Right.
For mostly,
Well, right,
you know,
you know,
like
I mean, in
Arkham
the
is
game environment,
or,
right.
Gotham, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet. What about a Marvel character for you, Josh?
Oh, it's tough. Probably Spider-Man. Oddly enough, it was mostly the DC stuff growing up. But I'm actually later on in life when sadly it's movies again, not comics. It should be, but Iron Man. That was
Right.
like a D level character, wasn't it? And
Well,
it was not.
He's
up
always
there
been a
with-
prominent character,
Yeah.
but he wasn't the A-lister, that
Yeah.
he was, when Tony or
I
when
just love
Robert
his,
Downey Jr. took it.
Yeah, I love his tech,
Yeah.
and it's like I want to have a garage like he does, or a place to work, and I love all that stuff, the armored suits and Spider-Man as well. Punisher,
Oh, there you go.
I like
Yeah.
Punisher.
nice.
Yes,
Well done, Netflix.
Morally complex
go.
character in a lot of ways.
yes,
There are a lot. I think there are a lot of good things about the Punisher that don't get foregrounded. I feel like a lot of the stuff that gets foregrounded is the violence part of it.
Right.
But I feel like Netflix got it right in a
Yes.
big way. You know, I mean the real moral and emotional complexity in a way that comics sometimes don't either. And you also, just as a side, you were like, it should be comics. I don't feel like you need to apologize for that, dog.
yeah.
I think you're
Well,
all right with that.
Movies have helped me get into comics,
Right.
and like I remember when they started making a lot in the early 2000s, a lot of comic book-based films. I would go home. I was curious to know more about this character, and I would look up everything on him pretty
Yeah.
much, and it all was pulled from comics, and so then you could spot the Easter eggs too.
Right.
And love comics. I love going to the store and all that. But
I just hate it when people make people feel bad for not having read comics or like the original book of something like that. Because it's just like
behavior,
you aren't winning the game, jerk. You're not making somebody else want to be more part of this for making them feel bad. Like, just be as like everybody starts somewhere, and if you decide that you want to like only read Batman books, fine. Yeah. That's your choice. You don't owe anybody anything.
When I was a kid, I would get a lot of comics because, we didn't have a lot of movies like we do now, which is, it's great. But yeah, that's how I would see more of Batman. And
you bet.
Even RoboCop had a comic.
That's right.
I got to see more of that. And Superman, the Death of Superman, like listening to you guys and Kevin Smith describe things they've read. Like I'm a Swamp Thing fan as well. Going back to DC,
nice,
got turned on to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Just the description he showed me, and I went to Mayhem, our local comic book store, and they had novelizations of several. Forgive me, I don't know what they call that when they take a lot of issues and
trade paperback. Yep.
Yeah, they had like 4 sets of books. I only bought one, but I loved it. I read it, and there's one I still want to read, and I think it's maybe called The Greening of Gotham.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really just from his description. And like I said, every time I kind of pick the ones to read.
Right.
I wish I had the money and the time to just read whatever, or like growing up, read whatever. Right. But yeah, I kind of have to pick the greats right now.
Well, that's okay.
What I hear. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're a dad of young kids too. I mean, you got enough going on. It's hard to sometimes pick up that stuff.
But it's also hard to read because you're like, why haven't we seen this on the screen?
No. Well, dude, hopefully that's coming.
Yeah.
In this DC Universe app.
Yes.
I'm very stoked about the Swamp Thing. But I was gonna say, like, if you, I don't know, when I went to college, I went for English Lit, and like the whole thing, like if you go to like a party with like anybody who's like an English Lit professor, they're like eventually you'll start talking about like Milton, Paradise Lost, or Ulysses. Like somehow it'll run across those things, and those are the things that like, oh, you haven't read Paradise Lost?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you haven't read James Joyce's Ulysses. Why are you here? Security, please escort them out of the building. But if you were going to have a party with comic book geeks, like some of those things, I mean, like, I feel like Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, and probably like some of the, I don't know, I feel like some of Bendis's Avengers. I don't know where you would go with Marvel, like as the seminal runs. I have some ideas, but there's nothing.
Claremont's X-Men.
Claremont's X-Men. That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. I mean, that's one of those things that like, oh, you've read that? You're legit. Don't worry.
Yeah. And he also came up with that little lesser known comic, Watchmen. I mean,
and that's in and of itself.
Yeah.
Look at this. 2 beers and I'm burping like crazy. But the Watchmen has such an interesting background to it, especially when you look at like how much of an homage it was to Steve Ditko on Alan Moore's part, and how much of a criticism of Steve Ditko it was at the same time. We could do a damn episode on that on its own.
Oh, for sure.
So we'll stop talking about it.
We will table that because that'll be a good conversation.
Yeah, that would be that would be great.
Gosh, that would be great.
Let's do least favorite. And this is a tough one because, there's a lot of just awesome characters all around. And, each company has their duds. I mean, Crazy Quilt as a Batman villain, really. But, at the time, though, we tend to judge things outside of that scope of when it was released. And so, when you put yourself back in those times, in those shoes, it's a little different. But for me, on a DC side, I'll do both DC and Marvel. DC was Harvey Bullock.
Good choice.
The policeman, the detective in Gotham, who worked under Jim Gordon and was always kind of anti-Batman. I see why that character exists. I don't question that, or I don't begrudge that. he's just always a douchebag, and that's how he's supposed to be. So I mean, the writers did a great job. They just made you not, you don't like this guy. He's just a jerk, And then on the Marvel side, MODOK.
Yes,
strictly for the look alone. What's creepier than a big ass TV screen face guy? Just the look just always
giant baby
me.
with a giant head. It's gross.
It just weirds me out. And that's a Kirby creation, isn't it?
It's a weird. I think it is Jack Kirby.
Because
I don't know who else. Oh man, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko came up with some crazy stuff, and there is zero evidence that they did any drugs whatsoever.
Right, so
which
that's
is
what
the
I'm thinking.
Craziest part of it.
Were they in the MK Ultra LSD experiments? But there's no evidence, right?
Jim Steranko, you could just be like, tell me an LSD story. He's like, one time I was without our Preminger. Listen to this, baby. And he pulls out the Sharpie. He's about to sign your book, but he talks to you for another 48 minutes.
That
Jim
guy's
Steranko,
artwork, though.
Jim Steranko is the best. Like, he is
Batman?
A national treasure. A national treasure.
Right.
If you ever go to a Comic-Con and you get to listen to him tell you a story, you consider it an honor because you are being given a gift.
Yeah.
Because him telling you a story is a sign of frickin' respect.
Nice.
If he doesn't want to talk to you,
he
won't.
Yeah.
But if he starts talking to you and starts telling you a story, he'll tell you some crazy stories.
Right.
But that dude, he's partied, and he's awesome. He's a cool guy.
That's awesome. What about your least favorite characters?
Least favorites. For Marvel, controversial choice, Deadpool.
Wow.
Because I feel like he's overused and not done well. The best version of Deadpool that I've ever read is Rick Remender's Deadpool from Uncanny X-Force. Right. And the reason Rick Remender wrote Deadpool so well is he was like, I've never read a Deadpool comic ever in my life. Right. So I just pretended that Deadpool was my character Blackheart Billy, a punk who, and basically just like a burnout skater punk who had like a metal head.
Yeah.
And he just made him not a dick, but just kind of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Like burnout punk. And it worked so well. Unless you read that, you wouldn't be able to tell that Rick Remender hadn't ever read a single Deadpool comic, but he made him actually relatable and have like a motivation beyond just chaos. Mm-hmm. I think that's the mistake writers make with Deadpool, is that if you have a character whose motivation is nothing at all and total nihilism, it's not interesting enough.
Right. It's chaos for chaos's sake.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Harvey Quinn.
Yeah.
Hey, you might be onto something.
Harley
Bullock, and Harvey Quinn, right? Yeah.
Harvey Dent Quinn Bullock
right.
Gets written as just chaos.
Yeah.
She kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But when you put an actual motivation to that chaos, when you have a character that's creating chaos, but has a motivation for doing so, then it still ends up pretty interesting.
There's more depth to that, yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you feel the Deadpool movies have made things a little better, given that the first one was a love story, the second one
the first one was great,
family, yeah.
The second one was a little more threadbare in terms of plot, but it's more of a comedy than it is a superhero movie, and so I can forgive that. That's fine. It was still fun. Cable didn't get any justice on screen. That was the only thing that frustrated me. I can go ahead and... Cable's one of my old school favorite characters. Right. I can deal with that. That's fine.
Was it the casting or just the look?
No, I feel like they just, if you take the fact that Cable is the son of like two of the original X-Men,
right,
and sort of like this messiah that ended up being not corrupted, but just like they sent him to the future, they thought he was going to like basically fix all of mutant kind's problems, and then he comes back and he's like, future isn't all that good either.
Right.
We have to keep fighting forever. And it's sort of a good reminder, and there's some depth to that too, where it's just like in terms of, because the X-Men are a metaphor for civil rights.
Yeah. And
then Cable comes back and he's basically like, we have to keep fighting forever. And you're like reminded like, oh, that is accurate to the metaphor.
Right.
Civil rights they're going to get taken away at any point. I mean, you can see that bleed away, whether it's, I mean, whether it's racial or it's sexual orientation or anything like that. I don't know. So
or Patriot Act. I mean, there's a million different things that could apply to that.
Mm-hmm. It's very scary. And, you know, having somebody come back and just be like, hey, I was supposed to fix everything. I didn't. That's why I'm back here is sort of a trap.
Humanity doesn't allow
like it a lot.
for fixing it.
And he doesn't, Cable doesn't get written very well, very often. Also, X-Men, the Age of Apocalypse version of Cable is pretty awesome. Sorry.
No.
We're drinking. We're talking about least favorites. I'm talking about favorites.
We're having
whatever.
That's right. Doesn't
Anyway.
matter.
No problem.
Deadpool's good, but sometimes.
Right.
Also, other least favorite, Hammerhead, because the hell is that as a Spider-Man villain?
Yeah.
Just got a big head.
Right.
Who cares?
They're out of ideas.
There's way better Spider-Man villains. You're like, if you were the saddest, like, if your whole thing is that you're like, but I hit people with my forehead, like, you're the saddest Spider-Man villain of all. Like, there's another guy who's got, like, wings that he built, and he's like a 94-year-old man.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The Vulture.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because the villains, more villains fall under the worst character type category. And you feel bad for these writers that are coming up with these kinds of villains because it's like, well, crap, they're not giving me permission to use a Green Goblin, so now I have to create some crappy villain.
I love dog shit villains.
Yeah.
I love
That should be the title of a comic.
Right.
Oh, I'm about to drop. I have it written, a list of characters that I'm doing for a Doomcast in future of like
Nice.
a terrible villains. One of them that one appearance only, Codpiece. It was a character who was maligned by women for the size of his thing, and so he created a Tony Stark mechanical thing that could like a drill and fire lasers and stuff. That's great.
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's the most awful thing ever, but
Right. And it's like they lost a bet and had to create something, and then that's what they were forced to do.
make a character with a mechanical dick.
Yeah.
And Denny O'Neil's like, fine, I'll do it. I don't think it's Denny O'Neil.
You didn't think I would, did you? You know, right? But
Just imagine a drunk Denny O'Neil just like, you didn't think I could do it, but I did.
Now, who wants to put their name on it?
he, by the way, is just off topic. One of my favorite writers of all time.
Dude, he is the best.
He defined Batman and kind of the bringing him out of the camp. You know, I'm in the 50s sci-fi. We're on a
Who's
different
responsible
planet.
for it?
Yeah, it's him. You know,
I mean, really making
the Question, the Vic Sage version of the Question. I mean, you know, Richard Dragon, Lady Shiva. I mean, he brought so much cool realism into that universe. It was just awesome. Anyway, whatever.
No, that's good. That's a good episode.
So Josh, what about you? Your least favorite characters?
You know, I can't think of any right now, sadly. You know, I could give you like Spider-Man 3. I didn't like the new Goblin.
Yeah.
That's about all I could do, sadly.
The Venom version in Spider-Man 3.
That too.
Oh, that
yeah.
sucked.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I wish I had answers. But, I mean, of course, Batman villains from, you know, the live-action 66 show, you know, Louis the Lilac, Egghead.
Right.
You know, they were just like, hey, Milton Berle, will just give him that part. I mean, Shane, he was like this cowboy guy, which I can't remember his real name, but he played Uncle Ben in the Spider-Man Raimi films.
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yes, look it up in the old Adam West show. He plays a character called Shane.
Huh. Wow.
Or Shane, forgive me. But
That's
yeah,
interesting.
He's a cowboy.
I didn't know that.
And I don't know what he really brings other than
That's
pistols
amazing.
and the cowboy hat. Yeah. Check it out. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, sadly, that's all I got.
That's so funny. Let's do one final topic and talk about the online platforms that we have access to nowadays. You know, so we have DC Universe app just launched. It was supposed to be tomorrow?
Yes.
But they dropped it yesterday, a day early, or was it the day before? 2 beers in, I don't know. So it was in the last day or so.
It's all good.
Yeah. So
Cheers.
anyway, they have a
I'll do sound effects.
You know, it's a nice app, and I think it has a lot of room to continue to grow. Marvel Unlimited. I've always been a DC guy.
Yeah.
We're talking 80-20 DC Marvel. Since I've had the Marvel Unlimited app, I've been reading so much Marvel and loving every second of it. Nice. I mean, I started with X-Men 1 in the 60s, and I'm just working my way up. You know, it's amazing, you know, and reading the old Fantastic Four stuff, the new Hulk. So, I mean, that app is just phenomenal because it has over 20,000 comics that you can go through and enjoy, and it's at a great price. You know, it's like $9 a month and easy peasy. And then Comixology, you know, that kind of started the boom of online comics and digital comics, and you know, they still sell the new stuff every single week. They have an unlimited service too, which I subscribe, and you can borrow, you know, like a library type thing, download something, and you know, there's really not a return date either. You know, I mean, I'm a lot of great Valiant stuff. That's where I was reading a lot of Marvel stuff because they were engaged with the Comixology Unlimited. But now that I have the Marvel app, I'm just downloading more Valiant and just some independent stuff. You know, basically.
Right. You could probably do an entire episode on Valiant alone. Too.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's phenomenal. So I mean, there's a lot of cool online platforms out there, but when it comes to DC Universe, so it's the newest one. It's in the news. There's a lot of buzz about it. You know, my only complaint, to be honest, because it's a slick interface, and you know, I thought it was pretty easy to navigate through. I was really excited just scrolling through the amount of titles for comics because I'm looking for comics, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that the animated series and all those things are all on there because I'll watch that stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. But for me, comics, I mean, that's the driver. So I'm looking through. I'm like, look at all these titles. And I go back through it, and I'm like, one issue, 3 issues, 5. What the hell is happening in my life? So I'm just hoping that they continue to build that library of comics, you know, as they continue to go.
Yeah, I thought I was doing something wrong. So they only have like a couple, 3, 4 issues of each of them, huh?
Yeah,
I thought that they had like the whole backlog of like.
No.
They were supposed to have the whole backlog of like Detective Comics from like 1938 on.
They have some of those intro issues, and then they'll have a select storylines here and there. Some will have 20 or 30 comics in there, but by and large, it's pretty small. And so I just hope that continues to grow because, you know, to me, that's what I'm paying for.
The one thing that I was hoping for is that it would also be available on like Amazon Fire Stick and PlayStation and stuff like that, so that I didn't have to go buy like an Apple TV to like stream. You know, the Wonder Woman TV series,
right? Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah,
which is available,
right?
But there's all sorts of video stuff that's available on there that I would rather just watch on a TV than just on a tablet or on my phone.
Right.
Of course,
which was kind of what I was paying for. Because I'm very excited for the exclusive video content that they're going to put out on there. Titans, Swamp Thing, Doom Patrol,
right?
And there's other stuff. Supposedly, Constantine, is going to come back. I suppose. Cool. I don't know if it's just on this app. It would be nice if Constantine, as well as like all of the other collective CW titles, showed up here as well, concurrent to when they're airing on CW. That would be tight.
Yeah.
Even if it's got the CW branding on it. Anyway. Those are my only complaints.
Totally agreed.
Well, I was reading into it more, and I know Batman-wise, on the 15th, it's Batman Day. They're launching tons of stuff, including the high-definition version of the animated series.
Oh, wow.
Tomorrow?
Yes. 15th is when it was supposed to launch. Maybe it's taken time to upload everything. I'm guessing.
And see, that's just it.
Maybe, hopefully,
it's just released. I mean,
right.
I'm going to be patient as the next guy.
3 days
early
right? Too. So
I mean, I can look at the Marvel Unlimited, and if I'm looking at it holistically, I really can't compare it to the DC Universe app because it's just so new. You know, so I mean, I know that we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a lot of additional content as we continue to.
Well, I did see The Death of the Family, and that got me really excited. I've never read.
You never have?
No.
Oh man,
I've cheated and just seen the movies.
Well, you get to watch Jason die. It's a really great.
Well, they provide the number, and maybe it's still active. I can call
the number. I have the original comics, and the numbers out there and stuff. I don't know if you could call it and it still works or not, but it was funny that the votes were just so narrow. You know, I mean, it wasn't a blowout. Kill him, or let him live. You know, I mean, he was voted
For
to
those
die.
who don't know, that's what was going on.
Yeah,
right?
So it was a call-in effort to, you know, the readers got to pick. Does Jason live or does Jason Todd die? And Jason Todd, for anyone that doesn't know, is a second Robin, who was a little bit more, he was a little less popular maybe than the Dick Grayson version. Did a few more things that were maybe morally ambivalent, but so they, you know, readers chose to kill him, you know, and so Joker has a heyday, you know, but it's a great storyline. So I hope you get a chance to read it and enjoy it.
Oh, I'm very excited to. Yeah.
The Superman appearance too was just a lot of fun, you know, and very almost sobering, you know, to a Batman who's almost out of control. You know, it was good stuff.
How often, going back a little bit, I guess, I know Stan Lee maybe reached out in the 60s to fans about possible story ideas or whatnot. How often have they done things like call in or write us if you've, or like now?
Honestly, not often.
Okay.
In
Just
fact,
curious.
yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that, you know, the industry as a whole, which is in decline, you know, I mean, would benefit from focus group type mentality here and there.
Yeah.
Not all the time, you know, of
Every
course.
once in a while.
But yeah, every once in a while when you have like the big event things, or when you want to reboot a universe for the 400th time in 5 years, you know, topic we're not going to get to, but you know, what the FDC, you know, they're pretty common with that. So
make comics, because I know this was something that you wanted to talk about, and I did have some good thoughts on this. I think they're good thoughts.
Yeah,
you have to make comics cheaper. I think it would be worth the while of a lot of these, not just, you know, the big two, but Image and Valiant. Print some, you know, ash cans used to be a thing. Yeah. You don't even have to go that far.
Right.
Everything's on glossy, full color, everything. Go back to newsprint.
Yeah.
Go print comics on cheaper paper. You know, go back to 4-color. Make them $1.50 again.
Yeah.
Kids will read that.
right.
Because you don't need just guys our age reading comics. You need kids reading comics.
Yeah. Because they turn into guys our age.
Exactly.
They continue to read comics. You
And
know?
you're right. Like that's part of the thing, is that you get like a lot of the kids that want to read like whatever, they'll spend $1 or $2 on like different stuff for apps like Contest of Champions. They'll spend $2 on a comic issue, but they won't spend $4.
Right.
The price point is just, it's a little high for kids to get into. They still want to read. They're interested in that. You just need to make it a little less expensive. You also, I think, need to make it accessible to fans. I think you can make things less. You don't have to reboot things constantly.
Right.
You should make things easier to jump onto. Make the story arc shorter. You don't need to make them 12 issues long. I think a maximum story arc should be about 2 to 3 issues. Yeah. You can make things like my favorite Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Is the 10th Doctor, because a lot of that stuff was just Monster of the Week, and that was fine. But it was the character that really drew me into that Doctor, and that was the thing that I loved about Spider-Man. When I started picking up Spider-Man when I was a kid,
it was easy to jump into.
Right, you could jump in. Oh, this is going to be Electro. This is going to be the Rhino. This is going to be Man Mountain. This is going to be, you know, whoever, whatever.
As of the 90s, good luck jumping into the X-Men and trying to understand what the hell's
beyond
going
that
on.
point.
Right,
absolutely.
The cartoon series helped.
Yeah. But post Age of Apocalypse, everything got real deep.
Yeah.
And then it didn't help, even with like, I mean, you got writers who started turning it into art, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And I want something that's complex, but you've got to have some stuff.
There's got to be accessibility and affordability. You know, those two things.
If you're going to try and get kids onto a new Hawkman series, I want to read a new Hawkman series. But and the new Venditti Hawkman series, I love Rob Venditti.
It's phenomenal.
But I don't think a lot of kids are going to just be like, well, I'm going to spend $4 on a Hawkman series.
This series, as much as and I'm glad you brought it up, because
I love it.
Issue 4 just came out. I just read it. It's very almost a sci-fi Indiana Jones type meets, you know. But what I feel like they're doing, and this is where it's not as accessible, is they're fixing Hawkman for everyone that knows that Hawkman screwed up. Not necessarily for some new kid who doesn't know anything about
Crazy
Hawkman.
Hawk. I love the fact that he's a mess.
Yeah.
And his origin is all over the place.
And the way that he's writing this, I think, is cleaning it up very, very well, but only guys like us understand that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as accessible to some new kid who's going to pick that up for the first time. He's like, I don't know what's Thanagar. You know, no one knows, unless you've been around the block. But
Right.
yeah, you're right. You know, and this is an industry that, has fallen 6% in revenue over the last year, which equates to $70 million. Now, there's still a $1 billion industry, but not by much.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's not a $1 billion industry, things are going to be real bad.
Yeah, and you talk about crisis mode
on Infinite Comics.
Right? Yeah,
no kidding.
And that's where it's going to get tough, because I don't know, $70 million hit in 1 year.
Print's a rough medium to begin with.
Right.
I think making comics more affordable and I think by that you look at a lot of kids. I don't even have kids, but I know a lot of people that do. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of nerd dads that are reading stuff like My Hero Academia and Naruto and One Piece and all sorts of other manga with their kids. The reason that they are is that they're buying one book and it's $9.99, but it's like a dozen issues of just this one color black and white print.
200 pages of
exactly. That's what you need to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Go make a manga version of a Marvel comic. If you made a Spider-Man manga, I'm not saying do it in like a Japanese manga style. I'm just saying do a black and white
From
Spider-Man story.
Right, yeah.
For kids. I don't know. Anyway.
And you're absolutely right, though, because it's just they've been trying to solve for this problem now since the 90s, overhyping and, let's kill everybody type event comic series.
The reason that Marvel doesn't have the rights to most of their characters is because they saved their company by selling all of their rights everywhere.
Yeah.
And to Toy Biz, whatever. Anyway.
Fantastic Four. There's
glad that they were
example.
selling toys, whatever.
Right. That's why we didn't see Fantastic Four the last couple of years in the comics, because that was their middle finger to Fox.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it's one of those things. But
and they canceled it right before the movie came out.
Because they knew that the
really
movie
just screwed the pooch on that.
And so for a Fantastic Four guy like myself, it's like, oh my God, are they going to bring him back? I got to see the Thing and Johnny argue. It's just, to me, it was too bad. But they're back and it's going well so far. But it is. You're right. It's got to be more affordable. It's got to be more accessible. And it's just, I don't know. It's my favorite medium, and to see it suffer, it's tough.
Do you think the movies have hurt or helped the sales of comics?
I think it's hurt the sales of comics. I think it helps drive people in maybe initially, but they don't stay for the long term because they're not always seeing what they see in the movies. Mm-hmm. And it is more convoluted when you're going into a comic, and you hear a reference or two. Oh, you mean so Cyclops has died 94 times? You don't know what's happening, and that's hard especially if you're a completionist, like myself. If I miss an episode of a TV show and I can't get it on DVR or something, sorry, I've got to wait for it to come out because I am now freaking out, but it's just crazy.
You jump into a Guardians of the Galaxy comic, you're like, oh, so Star-Lord's not Ego's son?
Right. Yeah.
Ego's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And Star-Lord's, what the hell is Spartax?
Right.
What is, Drax is not, so wait a minute, what is Drax exactly? And then you have to relearn all of this stuff because they made the choice to change all of these things, which I think is always something that I come back to, especially in the Doomcast when I'm talking about movies. You don't have to change the origin for anything. You can truncate it, you can shorten it, you can make it easier for people to understand. It's not necessary to actually change it because it's already being written for people who are like between 12 and 49 to 95. Who cares? Everybody can understand it.
Right.
You don't need to change it that much.
Yeah, putting your stamp on it, just for your ego's sake. Well, this is the change I made to it. Yeah, that's not important. It's more important, I think, to stick to that source because you're right. Those movies will drive people to the comics, but
they need to see the same thing when they get there.
Yeah, the retention's not there. You see spikes all the time in the comic industry. And then you see it's very Dow Jonesy, it's there's a depression every year.
Well, and they don't really market too much, do they? Of a comic coming out or anything like that?
Well, it doesn't help that they're also only exclusively sold in comic book stores.
Right.
And not in like Heidi's and Walmart's and Targets and stuff like that.
I started reading them in the 7-Eleven in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow.
On a newsstand. and I could afford 3 or 4 a week with my allowance. Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman. See ya.
Tom Thumb, Bruton, Alabama, the smallest city in Alabama. So your point is made.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. What they need to do is make it more accessible also. Not just cheaper, but also something that just like kids can go in and pick up.
Yeah.
Because if you have to go to a special place, like whether that's downtown or even on 73rd Street and whatever it is,
Right.
who cares?
Yeah.
If you can just like bike to Walmart, pick up 5 of them, and then bike home,
Yeah.
you're golden.
Kids
You'll make that sale.
Yeah, that's a lot more. It's more enticing for a kid. You know, so I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Again, this is a topic we could do an entire show on too. You know, I mean, it's
so many.
and hopefully we can.
Yeah,
someday.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and hopefully we're able to do it before the actual medium decides to fall completely apart.
Oh
but
gosh, I really hope that.
And I don't think I don't think it's ever going to go away. But I mean, I think that it's just going to be a long time before it's healthy, right? Yeah, it's gonna. And there's a lot of panic change that happens in comics. You know, I mean, this is why DC reboots every 5 years. You know, and it drives a person who's really into continuity like myself. It just drives you nuts a little bit. You know, and I appreciate Elseworld stories. I appreciate what they're doing with Earth 1. You know, it's a different takes. I just read the Earth 1 Green Lantern, which was just phenomenal to me. And, you know, that's my favorite character, Hal Jordan. It's not the same Hal Jordan that you see in the regular universe.
Right.
But I was very entertained by the book, you know. So it's just... But again, I'm the nerd who's been around for 612 years. And you know, I've seen multiple iterations of these characters.
Well,
so.
it's hard for me to, like, really... accept the Elseworld stories. I didn't know too much about them until I saw Flashpoint, the animated movie, and I instantly fell in love with Thomas Wayne Batman, which is something I never would have thought
That's kind of a breakout character.
Like, it's fascinating. You know, the Waynes go down that alley, and Bruce is the one that dies. And it's like, wow, that's such a different take.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and it's, you know, in an alternate reality, whatever.
I love alternate reality versions of stuff. It's just
very
because
interesting.
you can throw it away, then you can come back to it.
Yes.
My favorite current Marvel series is Cosmic Ghost Rider, because it's bonkers, and it's short synopsis.
Yeah.
Frank Castle, the Punisher, dies, goes to hell. Zarathos is like, oh, you're the new Ghost Rider in the Demon of Vengeance.
Me.
Then he goes to Earth, is the Ghost Rider for a while, and then Galactus comes to Earth, eats Earth, and is like, you're my new Herald. So he's now not just Ghost Rider, but also the Herald of Galactus. So he has the power cosmic and the demon Zarathos.
Yeah.
And they go to the
Silver
end of
Surfer when you have Frank Castle.
And then the timeline that they're in ends because, long story short, Thanos wins, then dies anyway. Now he's out of time. He's displaced. Comes back and he's like, I'm going to fix Thanos. Goes, kidnaps baby Thanos out of his crib on Titan. And then he gets attacked by the Guardians of the Galaxy from an alternate timeline because he created a new one by doing that. And it's the Juggernaut, but it's Howard the Duck with the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, Cable, Jubilee, and then like a bunch of other crazy stuff. And I that's just the beginning. I love that alternate timeline stuff because you can go absolutely anywhere with it.
Well, and do you think that's what the future is with these films? Once people get tired of the big canon?
Yeah, I mean, they've got an opportunity there for sure. And you know, as a kid of the 70s and 80s and stuff, I loved the Marvel What If stories, you know, and even as a kid, I knew enough that, you know, well, it says the title, What If. That's enough for me to understand that this isn't going to be canon or whatever, you know, but it was just a fun escape, you know, and that stuff's really cool, you know, and
it is.
Yeah, really, really awesome.
Oh man.
But, you know, so
such good stuff.
Yeah, that Elseworlds type stuff is, you know, it's got its merit for sure. But
I can see that coming into the spotlight very soon.
Yeah. And you know, again, and even the DC app, you know, they have the Gotham by Gaslight film. That jump-started DC's Elseworlds series. That was the very first book under that, well, pseudo imprint, if you will. But yeah, good stuff, man. But,
oh wow, that's great.
But yeah,
neat.
Dan, we want to thank you for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I'll
Yeah.
come back anytime.
Yeah,
Oh,
good.
man.
Well, we'll hold you to that.
Okay,
So,
we'll see you tomorrow.
That's one.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Well, I want to thank Dan for bringing the Voodoo Ranger
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
IPA. This is very good.
New Belgium.
I took a picture of it with my phone because I want to save the.
Nice.
I want to remember the brand later. So
Heck
that's good.
yeah.
It's one of my favorite beers. It's my favorite IPA. I'm not that big of an IPA guy. My
Yeah.
favorite IPA is Des Moines IPA. Confluence.
I've had that too. That's really good.
Confluence is so good.
Yeah. I don't know. I like IPAs. They go well with burgers.
Oh, yeah.
They're a red meat beer, in my opinion, but for those that still eat meat,
You can make burgers out of anything. That's the thing.
Yeah. That's true.
that's for sure.
That is true.
Dan, check him out on the Doomcast. Great, it's phenomenal. It's on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I got to get all of them on YouTube. Most of it's on Facebook. It's facebook.com/the Doomcast. There's both Twitter and Instagram at the Doomcast.
Nice.
The Instagram is just basically pictures that I'm taking of panels of comics I'm reading.
Oh, good.
That's
Nice.
almost all it is. And then
Yeah.
screenshots of Doomcasts as I release them. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
It's been real awesome having you on board. Check out Field of Geeks online. You can pretty much see us anywhere. Facebook, huge presence there.
Yes.
We're on YouTube, we're on Stitcher Radio, iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean, of course. And my blog, stevescomicblog.com. I'll take all the hits you can give me. So it's
Do it.
I need to be more regular. I get it, but I have a lot of archive material. And it's
Target
kinda
vegan superheroes.
Right.
Make up one.
fun. Yeah, right.
If you want to be more regular, just go vegan.
Right.
You're gonna automatically
criticize some vegans and I'm in. It's funny because my average post gets anywhere from 20 views to like 8,000 views. So it's just bizarre.
weird.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest ones were George Lucas selling Star Wars, and I do every now and then I would do a "Why is this character cool?" segment, and I did Nightwing, Dick Grayson. That's the largest hit I've had.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Nightwing has a dedicated ass following.
He does, man. And
My homie Luke Roth, he big old Nightwing fan.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are dedicated Nightwing fans out there.
Yeah.
Huge hashtags, even if you're not talking about Nightwing. just put
Right.
Nightwing.
Exactly.
Hashtag Nightwing.
Well, and it's funny because as a character too, he's up there for me. I mean, he's a very well balanced character. He lost his parents too, but he's also not a total psychopath. You know what I mean? So he's very
Right.
well adjusted. He's kind of the everyman, but who has all these extra,
Of course.
abilities.
He was also older when he lost his parents in a way. Maybe not that much older, but it sort of seems to make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
It still messed him up. I don't know.
It messed him up a little bit, but I think seeing Bruce and learning from that example, he decided that he's going to kind of go his own way a little bit. He's still obviously a vigilante,
Right.
But at the same time, he's pretty well adjusted, and it's fun that's a fun character to read. He's
It's just
good.
unfortunate we never got the Burt Ward Nightwing.
Well, it's not too late, Josh. So I'll call Bert when I get home,
I am
and
totally
we'll talk
kidding.
about it. Yeah.
I'm totally kidding.
Anyway, but again, great show, guys. Dan, again, hopefully
Lots of
have you
fun,
on
Steve.
soon. And that's a wrap. I'm Steve.
I'm Josh.
I'm Dan.
Have a good day.
Take care.
I want to leap over buildings, want to fly over the shores, save the people from the villains, catch the crooks who rob the stores, write my name upon the sky, and when you call me, I'll be there, faster than a lightning flash, rushing through the cool night air. So start ignition, count to zero. I just wanna be a superhero. With fearless thoughts, emotions swirl.